We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara Mesechet Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 5b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said that Hachnasa, when you bring something in from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid, that can also be referred to as Yitzia. And the Gemara says, how do we know that? Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah Mesechet Shabbos, Hamotzi me Rishus l'Rishus Chayiv. If somebody takes from one Rishus to another Rishus, the person is Chayiv for Hotzah on Shabbos. And Milo Askinan, aren't we talking to come Ayil Iyule? We're talking also when you bring it from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid. It can be in either direction. V'kakari lehotzah, it's referred to as hotzah. It says hamotzi merishus l'rishus, and so therefore you see again you can use the word hotzah even in a situation of hachnasa. But the Gemara says v'dilma kamapik merishus hayachid l'rishus rabim. But how do you know that's what the Mishnah is talking about? Maybe the Mishnah is only talking about taking from rishus hayachid to rishus rabim, and that's why it's referred to as hotzah. The Gemara says no. Imkain, if that were the case, nisni hamotzi merishus hayachid l'rishus rabim. It should have said you're taking out from rishus hayachid to rishus rabim. Why does it say from one rishus to another rishus? It means to say da'afilu me rishus harabim l'rishus hayachid. It means even if you're taking from rishus harabim to rishus hayachid, v'kakari lahotzah, and still we refer to that as hotzah. V'tayim amayin, what's the reason for that? Why do we call that hotzah if you're really doing hachnasa? You're really bringing it inside. The answer is Tana kol akiras chayfetz mimakomo. To the Tana, we say that anytime you uproot something from its place, hotzah kari la. The Tana refers to that as hotzah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravina says, Masnisa nami deka, you can infer that from the Mishnah as well. The Katani Yitzios Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba Bifnim, because it says in the Mishnah, the Yitzios of Shabbos, two which are four inside, Ushtayim Shein Arba B'chutz, and two which are four outside. The Kamafarish Hachnasa, and it explicitly explains cases of Hachnasa over there, even though we're referring to Yitzios. So Shema Minasa, you see from there again that you can use the word Yitzios even by Hachnasa. And the Gemara continues, Rava says a different answer. What does it mean when it says that it's two which are four? Yitzios Shabbos is two which are four, if we're talking about Hachnasa as well. What it really means is Rishuyos Katani. We're talking about the fact that there are two Rishuyos. That's all the Mishnah means. There are two Rishuyos, meaning there's Rishus Harabim, the public area, the public domain, and the Rishus Hayachid, the private domain. Again, Rishuyos Shabbos Shtayim, it simply means there are two Rishuyos on Shabbos, and again, that comes out to four different scenarios in terms of liability. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Maros negoyim shnayim shein arba. Again, when it comes to tzaras as well, there are two cases which are four. The Gemara says, Tanan Hasan, we learned in the Mishnah over there, this is the Mishnah in negoyim, Maros negoyim shnayim shein arba. When it comes to Maros negoyim, there are two cases which are four. What are the cases? There's Baheres, there's the case of Baheres in the Torah, that's Azah Kashelik, that's like white like snow, Shni Allah, and then secondary to it, meaning the Tolda of Baheres is Kesid HaHechel, that would be white like we find the plaster of the Heichel. And then there's a case of an Av Se'es, which is called Se'es in the Torah. That's Ketzemer Lovan, that's white, like you find wool is white. And Shni Allah, then secondary to it, meaning a Tolda of Se'es, is Kikrum Beitza, that would be like the membrane of an egg. And so those are the various colors. And the Gemara continues and says, Amar Reb Chanina says, Man Tana Maros Negoim. Who is this Tana about Maros Negoim over here that's saying that you have Baheres and then it has a secondary, and then you have Se'es and it has a secondary? The low Rabbi Akiva, it is not like Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva, because if you're following Rabbi Akiva, Kevan Damar Zu Lamala Mizu Vizu Lamala Mizu. The way Rabbi Akiva says it is, he actually just has it in order of how white it is. He has four levels. And Imkain Tiharta Sid Heichel Milatzar. If you're actually not going to be able to have the Sid of the Heichel, that color combined with any other color. The point over here is that according to the Mishnah in Negoyim, let's say you have Baheres and then you have Shni Allah Kesid HaHeichel, it means to say that you can combine, if you have a little bit of color which is white like Baheres and a little bit of color which is white like Sid, and it has to amount, there has to be a certain shear, there has to be a certain amount, it's a gris, and so therefore you can combine those two shades of white. But according to Rabbi Akiva, you actually would not be able to combine in that fashion. For example, when it comes to Sid Heichel, it would not combine. Because why is it not going to combine? Bahade man letzarfe, who are you going to combine it with? Letzarfe bahade Baheres, if you're going to try to combine the Sid Heichel with Baheres, According to Rabbi Akiva, se'es is actually a brighter shade of white, and you can't combine something that's separated by two levels, by two different levels of shades. And letzarve bahade se'es, and what, you're going to combine it with se'es, which is the level right above it, but lav tolda dideyu, but that's not considered a tolda of se'es. A tolda can only combine with its av, and so therefore you would have this difficulty according to Rabbi Akiva. We'll see Rashi in a moment, we'll explain more clearly. But the Gemara says, if so, if that's going to be your argument, you can make the same argument by krum beit sanami, by the membrane of the egg color as well, make that argument. Bahade man litzrave, what are you going to combine that with? Letzarve bahade seis, if you're going to try to combine it with seis, ika sid adif minei, again, sid is the color that's right above that, and so therefore you can't combine when there's a separation of two levels. And letzarve bahade sid, but if you're going to say to combine with sid, lav bar minei, again, that's not a tolda of that, it has to be a tolda of that particular av. And Rashi explains, Baheres Aza Kashelag, again, this is the Mishnah over there. It says that Baheres is white as snow, Aza Levana Biyosa, that's very white. And then it said that Shni Allah Kesida Heichel. Then the secondary to Baheres was Kesida Heichel, like the plaster of the Heichel. Diafagav the Tzemer Lovan Aza Levninuso Misid. Now, even though Tzemer Lovan, again, when it comes to Se'es, that is Ketzemer Lovan, even though that's a little whiter than Sid, Al Karchach Se'es Shu'av Karov El Lavnuniso Shel Baheres. But you have to say that seis, which is an av, that must be closer to the whiteness of beheres. It's just a little bit higher because it's not quite as white as that. And anything which is darker is considered gavoa from lavan ulefikach nikra seis. That's why it's called seis. In other words, seis is slightly darker, and that's why it's called gavoa mimenu ma'at. It is slightly darker than the beheres. And Rashi continues v'hashnios, and when it comes to the secondary shades of white, shenis rabu lahem sid ukrum beitza. So that's going to be sid and krum beitza. V'hasid lovan min hakrum, and again, sid is going to be a little whiter than krum. Ulamata min hakrum eino nega. Now, if it's any less than krum, that's not even called saras. Ela bohak, that's called bohak v'tarhu, and that's considered to be pure. Ushnei maros shel toldos halavana la'av halavan hagavoa liav hagavoa. The way it works is that the higher tolda is associated with the higher av. Hilkach sid la baheres, therefore sid is associated with baheres. Ukrum la seis, and krum is associated with seis. V'riba hakosav as hatoldos litzdarif im avosei. And the idea is that the toldos, they join together with their avos l'chigris, to the shear of a gris, shu shear nega. That's the measurement that you have to be considered saras. And Rashi continues, man tana maros negoyim garsin, and the proper text is, who is the tan of this Mishnah that talks about the maros negoyim shnayim shem arba? And Rashi explains, Elahachi Kamra, what it means to say is as follows. Mishana Mishnah zu b'lashon avos v'toldos. Who is the author of this Mishnah that teaches this Mishnah in the language of avos and toldos? Again, that's the way the Mishnah is set up in Negoim, as avos and toldos, and the av is mitzdarif with its tolda. The lo Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara is saying that's not like Rabbi Akiva. The ik Rabbi Akiva, because if we were following Rabbi Akiva, Kevan damar lakamon maros Negoim zu lamala mizu nishnu keseder malosan. Rabbi Akiva understands that the maros Negoim are learned again in the order of their shades of white. Hasheleg v'atzemer v'asid v'akrum. V'amrinan l'kaman, we say later on, keseder mishnasan hein mitzdarfen zelazeh, that the way the mitzdaref actually is the way that they are ordered. Again, the way that the Mishnah said it was that the av is mitzdaref with its tolda. The way Rabbi Akiva says it is that each one is just mitzdaref as long as it's one level away and not separated by two levels. Ve'en echad mitzdaref legavoa heimenu shtei malas. It can't be mitzdaref with something which is gavo, which is higher than it by two levels. It has to just be one level away. And the Gemara continued and said, Im kain dehu shanan b'lashon avos v'toldos. If it was Rabbi Akiva who learns it in this fashion of avos and toldos, so then tiharta mari hasid militz darif. Then the shade, which is like plaster, will not be able to join anything. Demidetanya l'sid shniya lebaheres v'lo tanya nami shniya l'seis, because from the fact that it says that the sid is shniya lebaheres, secondary to baheres and not seis. V'arei afmi seisi pechusa, now it is secondary to seis as well in terms of the shade of white. Shma mina svir le'latana de lo bas mina de seisi. You see that it's not considered part of the species, so to speak, of the seis. It's not essentially a tolda of the seis. V'lo mitzdarfa b'hado, and therefore it's not going to join together with seis. Umehashta b'hade man nitzrafa. If that's true, what is it going to join with? I b'hade baheres avia. If it's going to be with baheres, which is its av. Ha'iko seis shikat semer dadifa mina below. And again, that's separated by two levels. You have seis in between. Nimsas baheres l'malam and hasid shtei malos. It comes out that baheres is two levels above sid. Rabbi Akiva zu l'malam izu boy. Rabbi Akiva requires that this one be directly above, meaning they have to be just one level apart. They can't be two. So the point of the Gemara here is that if Rabbi Akiva held like the Mishnah in terms of avos and toldos, it would emerge that something like sid is not able to combine with anything because the one above it is not its av, and the one two above it, which is its av, is two above. So nitzrafa bahade seis shu mala achas. If you're going to say it joins with seis, which is just one level above, lav tolda didei. Again, that's not its tolda. Because you just said it's a type of beheres. And Rashi continues and explains, Rabbi Akiva. Now, if the Mishnah were Rabbi Akiva, hachi boile lemisna, then it should have said as follows: Beheres aza kashel legus seis ketzemer lavan. The beheres is like snow, the seis is like wool. Ushni Allah sid hahechel krumbeitza. And then secondary is sid hahechel and krumbeitza. Then, if it would have said it in that fashion, the nimsa lememar kulu mina dahadadininu. Then we could say they're all kind of the same species. Uvaheres useis mitzdarfen, and then we would say that beheres and seis they can be mitzdaref. Useis v'sid nimsa lo tziraf l'sid, and then you could say that seis is mitzdaref with sid. So you have something for sid. V'hachi amrina b'toras kohanim. That's what we say in Toras Kohanim. But beheres useis the mitzdarfi. That beheres and seis are mitzdaref. V'hayim malabed the mitzdarfen imzeh. Again, they join with one another. Aval hashta the mechalekas tolda lazu. But the way that our Mishnah actually says it, which again is this one is a tolda of that one, and this one's a tolda of that one. Svirulon shein mitzdaref kolechad elo imav. If it comes out that according to the Mishnah in Nagayim, each one is only mitzdaref with its own av. But the Gemara then said, if so, the Islay Rabbi Akiva dolo mitzdarfi l'gavo mimenu shtei malus. If it's true that Rabbi Akiva says it can't combine with something two levels above it, so why don't we have the same question by krum shel beitzanami, by the membrane of the egg also? Amaylo kasha loch, you should have the same kasha. Bahade man nitzrafei, what's that going to combine with? Ibahade seis aviv, ikosid do adif minei. If you're going to say it combines with seis with it, which is its av, but that's sid is one level above. Hareya seis gavo shtei malus. The seis is problematic because it's two levels above. Nitzrafa bahade sid. Now you're going to say it's going to combine with sid. Lav barmino she'ena tolda lav echad. That's not the same min because again, lav barminehu. That's not the same species because again, they're not a tolda for one av. Umishaninan, and the Gemara will answer, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Vav Amud Aleph.